Hi, Angelo. Here we go. I'm excited, man. Extremely excited to have you on here.
Thank you.
For so many reasons. One, because the more I've been listening to you for a while now, and the more I just realized that this genre of music is so new still. Afro gospel is extremely new. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Maybe because I'm in the States and we've been listening to Afro pop and all these other genres that are mixed in, we thought, well, Christians are already doing it. Boom, it's out there. And maybe you have been doing it, but the actual genre of Afro gospel is doing itself. I think today is especially big for me, not because I've interviewed all kind of artists from all kind of backgrounds, CCM, CHH. I've done everything in 20 years. God has given me the opportunity, but you're the first ever Afro gospel artist that I've ever interviewed. And I'm excited because it's brand new to the genre. Here in the States, it's extremely new. It's to find it is like gold. You're looking in, books that are there that are gold, but you can't really find them because you got to look through all the deep stuff to find it to the good stuff. So I'll say this for everybody who's checking out. It's Jblaze on the FNF Live podcast. We jump right in. I don't sit here with all these beat up all intros. We want to get right into it because today is a lot to cover. And I think it's going to be a class is in session because it's not just about my man who is an amazing artist, does great music, man of God, is creative, does a bunch of different stuff. We're going to talk about all the stuff he does, which is dope. But I think it's really important for people who listen today to get educated on what's happening with this genre of music and why you need to be on the Spotify playlist. You need to, not mine. He might give you a couple. He might just say, listen, you need to go check out his new single, Bigger. We'll tell you about that in a second. But I'm excited because the genre of music is fairly new. And so my idea is I sat back and prayed and I was like, God, how do we really want to do this to get people educated on it? Because it's not just about, oh, tell me about your single. That's great. And that's awesome. But there's a whole world. I feel that, first of all, you're on the other side of the world. I'm in Miami, Florida. You're in Nigeria, right? Correct?
Lagos City.
Yeah. So it's like 3 o'clock this time here, Eastern. In his house, it's like 8 o'clock at night. So he's going to bed in a couple of hours. I'm still in the midday of my day. But first of all, for people that don't know, Angeloh, Afro gospel, that term, that's the kind of music you do. I feel like it's a fusion of a different group of things.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be tremendously honest. The last 2 years, I really have gotten into Afro pop, and I'm not going to say it's all Christian because it's hard to find good, solid Afro pop Christian playlists. It's hard. Now there's stuff out there, but before there wasn't. So for people that don't know what Afro gospel is, people that are in the States here in the US, what exactly is Afro gospel? So they have an idea of what that is.
Okay. So, first things first, I'll start off with something that is a friend of mine, but he's also in the space. His name is Henry Soul. And there's something he's been championing for a long time. He says the gospel is a message, not a sound.
Okay.
So once that is established rather, it paves the way for a whole lot of arguments. So I mean, you've seen this with hip hop, Christian hip hop. We've seen this with Christian rock. Like I remember a few years ago, and when I was younger, we'd be in church and pastors would be like, oh, rock music is devil's music. And now the biggest worship bands are like rock bands,
It's true.
So first things first, the gospel is a message and not a sound.
Okay.
Then second thing, and this is something that I stepped into recently, God was like taking me through a whole lot of journey. And he was like, he says, I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, but it's the power of God that saves everyone who believes.
Yeah.
And this is how it hit me. It says, I didn't say I'm the power of God. I didn't explain the channel of the power. Like the gospel is the power of God. It didn't say through a pastor. It didn't say through a particular type of music. It didn't say through a particular type of profession. It just says the gospel is the power of God that saves everyone who believes. So the gospel has to get to somebody for them to believe it. So however you get the gospel to them is most likely the concern of how God has wired you. So if you're a teacher, I'm sure somehow teaching, whether it's little kids or teaching sermons, the gospel is going to find expression somehow. You know, if you're a restaurant owner, you know, I mean, like I see you sizzling a lot of awesome stuff that I'm looking forward to, you know. But I see a whole lot of even like your campaigns and stuff. Like you don't necessarily come and slap like Jesus all over the place.
I don't.
For a believer, I can tell like there's love, there's harmony. You know, when people come around to eat, they feel welcome and invited. That's one way the gospel is finding expression. And so here I am, you know, we're born into what we call the MTV-based generation. Pop music was what we grew up on.
Got it.
So there's hip hop, there's pop music, there's, you know, house and all that good stuff. And for a long time, as Africans, you know, we were consuming Western content for a long time. But then, you know, over time, we had founding fathers who had started like Afro Beatz and stuff, people like Fela, people who were doing high life and other kinds of African sounds across the continent. But because we were born in the MTV generation, we grew up watching a lot of Western content. So at the beginning of our time, if it wasn't Western enough, it's so funny. I was having a thought earlier today. I'm sorry, I'm trying to create basis.
You're painting the picture. I get it. A
picture, yeah. So it's funny, like earlier today, I was remembering there was a song done by secular artists. So this is like probably 10, 15 years ago. And this was literally the lines of the song. Young man, tell me, where did you get your skills from? You must have got it from a foreign land. You sound too tight to be African.
Wow.
And at that time, it was cutting edge because the more Western you sounded,
the more hip you were,
the better for you in pop culture, right? So people were trying so hard to sound like Usher. People were trying so hard to sound like 50 Cent.
Yeah,
that was like the vibe.
All these dudes, yeah.
15 years later now, the more Western you sound, the more likely you're not going to get noticed by anybody.
Oh, okay. So that's switched on his head now.
It switched on his head. So it hit me today, like, man, if that guy released that song in this year, man, he'd get a whole lot of trolling on the social media for it, man. Because like it was, but they wouldn't understand that at that time, that was the essence. That was like the goal, sounding so tight. Like if we're too tight and you sounded foreign, man, you knew what you were doing. Now, the more African you sound, the better. So what is Afro gospel? Afro gospel basically is Africans painting the picture of the gospel through African expression. So on the music side, and this has different expressions, and I say this, and I know why this is like the first time I'm defining this and defining it this way. And I say this because it's a whole culture. So there's music, there's art, there's fashion, there's poetry, there's business, there's entrepreneurship, and all that good stuff happening that is like solely African. Now you even have like tech companies opening apps and they have African names. Like if you came up with one funky Western name, nobody was going to use your app, you know? So the whole Afrobeat movement, first of all, is a celebration of African expression. And so Afro gospel is the gospel finding expression through African culture in the case of music or music related stuff. So technically speaking, that's what it is at heart. But technically speaking, it's, you know, taking the gospel and sharing it through Afro beats, Afro fusion, like you mentioned. So Afro beats and Afro fusion. Afro fusion is like a mixture of things. So you have Afro beats. So it's like not just Afro beats in itself. Afro beats is actually a genre on its own.
Yeah.
And then there's like Afro fusion that can fuse other African genres.
Yeah, and I've heard there's Afro beats.
It's a whole argument. Yeah, man.
It gets.
I don't even know which one is anymore. Like I just be like, guys, it's all Afro beats, man.
I wanted to ask this because it's exciting, even the fact that it's still very new here in the States, and sadly, the picture we sometimes get in the States is really watered down because people are taking Afro pops now. They're taking Afro pop or Afro beat, and they're just sprinkling it on everything now. It's literally, I don't know why I went black on the screen.
Yeah, I was wondering.
But it's okay. Not sure what happened to my camera. It died on me for a second, but we're going to keep going. It doesn't matter. I'll figure it out in a second here. Listen, so the question.
Yeah, I'm here, man.
We can still hear the audio, which is great. My question is this, because of it being, would you say the genre is still in its grassroots level? Like when I say that, like, are churches and people in Africa open embracing Afro gospel, or is it still, because example, like when CHH was trend-setting at the beginning, many years ago. Pastors and leaders wouldn't let you put that hip-hop artist on a stage. They would have to go the youth stage outside by the trash can. Like, you wouldn't get that reverency and that respect because of that genre. Is Afro gospel at that stage, or is it past that already, or people have openly accepted it when it comes to it being presented at churches or events and stuff like that?
Okay, so it's even fantastic how you separated the conversation. So yes, we're still there, but I think we're like at the breaking point. And I say this because we've all had our fair share. So for a whole lot, I mean, myself now, I've been actively doing music for 10 years, but I came onto the scene, like became known 5 years ago.
Okay.
So we've had that fair share of backlash in a sense. Like, I mean, so I told, like, I was alive when I saw that if you played rock music, they tell you it's the devil's music. And this was like on a global scale. Wow. Now you have Hillsongs and co, and literally what they do is sing rock music, man.
It's true. It's true.
Know? And nobody, like, it's become so big, nobody associates it with, you have to like go and sing heavy metal now for us to be like, oh, okay, yeah, that's the devil's music right there. and I mean, if you know, you get what I'm saying. So, and we also saw that hip hop transition to happen in CHH with you know, Cross Movement, and then Reach Records as well. I happened to witness the final days of I don't want to call it the final days. I want to call it like maybe the twilight of Cross Movement.
Okay, yeah.
I saw that. That was like when I became fully immersed in the Christian hip hop culture. And so we saw that, and we saw the transition. And even in the transition, I mean, you know, Reach Records and the Cray had that initial battle too, and everybody in that generation, basically. And of course, it's still prevalent. So here in the continent of Africa, in my home country, Nigeria, it's even more complex. Why I say more complex? First of all, as a church, we have quite a truckload of denominations.
Okay. Possibly even more, right, than the US?
No, like when I say truckload, I mean more than the US.
Yeah.
I mean more than the US. Like nah. We have denominations on denominations. You know,
okay.
You know, and then it's so funny because even within the denominations, like you can have like what can I call it now? You can have like sects. You know, I mean, you could have different like intra belief systems that diverge, maybe because of tribal differences, maybe because of location differences. You could have two branches of the same church in two different types of locations that think extremely differently from the other. And you wonder, like, how are you guys using the same logo? Like, what's going on? That's how serious it is.
Wow.
So first off, you have, and again, I like to refer to it as culture. For example, myself and my friends, were coming back from a show. We went for a show, and we were coming back. It was late at night, and the police stopped us, regular stop and check. Hey, you guys, identify yourself. Where you guys coming from? And I mean, everybody in the car, dreadlocks and all, chains and wristwatches and whatnot, which is like easy red flags, you know, if you're from this side. Yeah. And we were like, oh man, like literally we're youth ministers, you know, we just came back from show, event, outreach conference kind of thing. And and then the officer, when he finally got to our social media page and saw all we're doing, it was like, okay, now I agree you guys are believers, but what kind of believers are you guys? What's all this thing you're putting on your head? You know, you guys, so he was not trying to like convert us into real Christians.
Yeah. It sounds like legalism to
me. I
was
like, bro.
Yeah, it sounds like a little legalism.
Man, even if I don't even want to, legalism makes it too intelligent. Like it's deeper than that. Like if you say legalism, like it kind of like intellectualizes the problem. Yeah. So and then I was like, you know, sir, I'm sure when you were like my age, you had an Afro on.
Yeah.
You know, if you whip out your father's picture now from the early 70s, he probably had the biggest Afro in class.
With a nice
and then they used to wear boot cuts in those days. I'm like, how did you guys grow up and all of a sudden forget that you used to be young? Yeah. So in your days, Afros were the in thing. And nowadays now it's dreadlocks and tattoos and whatnot. Like it's just culture that's happening, man.
Simple.
Like it's no different. But I mean, this is you that has to be self-aware enough to even pay attention to those differences. I mean, for my new song I released, I've had to like step onto TikTok full time, and it gave me a fresh appreciation for the Gen Z, man. I'm like, you guys work hard, but from from the perspective of a millennial, we'd be like, man, you guys all just play on social media and just waste your lives and all that stuff. But it's incredible hard work that they do.
Yeah, I'm seeing and I know what you're talking about. If you haven't checked out with this new single, Bigger, I've seen, I'm like, wow, this man is dropping like a TikTok video every couple of hours. Like, it's crazy. And as we may say that they're just sitting there on there, but it is hard work. I'm not gonna lie, it's
hard.
Us millennials.
And they grow to the point where they even get paid for it these days. Yeah. So I'm like, man, something has to shift in my mind. So it took for me to step into the shoes to be like, oh, I get it now. I don't even get it fully, but okay, now I'm willing to pay attention more because apparently we've had a misconception in some ways. Of course, it's not like everything is wrong, but okay, I can relate to you better now and understand your own time and your own season. So yeah, back to the conversation exactly. So I mean, we've had our fair share of churches not opening up to us. However, like I said, there's a transition happening. It's still not happening at scale yet, but it has begun. So why I say at scale is because we still have traditional churches across the nation, across the continent. And by traditional, I mean churches that hold on to the cultural norm. So like I said, it's not even about legalism because the old people, they feel there's a certain way you're supposed to dress as a normal person in society. Yeah. So when they see you with your jeans torn, they don't understand why. Yeah. You know, so it's not really, so what happens is when you go to church, they cover it with the Bible. Wow. But it's not actually about the Bible. Like, it's not even actually about legalism. It's actually culture that's playing up. And so because we're in a Christian space, I feel like the best way to put my argument is to cover it with scripture. That's literally what happens. And so we've had a lot of pushback over the years, but in the past 2, 3, 4 years, there's been a shift. On one hand, you know, things like streaming. So streaming, for example, got us direct access to the people, you know, more than total reliance on church structure. So some of us have been able to some extent to build a following or build a ministry off the back of going face to face and interfacing with the people directly. However, it also has its challenges still because I mean you can do a lot of good work, but when the organization that calls the shots, quote unquote, put their support behind a thing, it can amplify all your hard work, you know, and take it to the next level, which is now also beginning to happen. And so the next thing that's also begun to happen is we're also having like a change of guard. There's something we call a change of guard, in the sense that we're having a transition in leadership. So you have, I mean, a huge chunk of our major churches in the country right now were founded like decades ago. You know, what has now started to happen, I mean, you have myself now, for example, it's very symbolic in a way for me too, because now I just gave birth to my baby. She's about 4 months old. My generation now are becoming the parents of the time. And so I have more youth pastors, youth ministers who are setting up their own churches, building off their own platforms, and they understand the culture and they understand the struggles, they understand the peculiarities of what we do and why it's essential. And so for as many who have taken it upon themselves, so there are things that happen. One, some people understand and then make it an agenda.
I get it.
So for as many as those who are taking it upon themselves,
to implement it into like everything you guys are doing. That's what you're saying, right? So that's what I mean, like an agenda. So in the sense where you have pastors now coming to church and doing the opposite of what the pastors then used to do. So you have pastors now inviting us to perform at the churches, to minister directly at the churches. They don't keep you outside, they bring you to the center stage. You know, now you're having, you know, at the moment, I'm working on a project with one of the foremost, I'd consider her like an urban Christian artist. So there's something I was also talk about, like urban Christian artists may not necessarily is more contemporary music, but then it's for the urban community. So in a sense, Maverick music, Maverick City, you know, Hillsong, they're not traditional worship. They're young people worship too, but so we relate to that kind of music. So now you're having people in that space who are here and have risen in their own ministries and careers and have enough power and influence to make moves. And you have them now setting up platforms and actively creating space for
Afro gospel to find expression.
Got it.
So those are the things that now happen. So for example, you have pastors who are starting churches now who understand, and then from time to time create events and bring people like ministers like us in. You have some who even actively preach about it on Sunday, encouraging their people to consume what we create instead of consuming what the world is creating. You have creatives as well who are building platforms. So, because again, what is even happening? The transition is happening, it has begun, but it's still not enough to be a sustainable space.
Yeah.
So we have a few creatives. I don't know if I'm allowed to name drop.
You can. I know you're gonna name, because you've told me before off record. You told me about Gospel Hydration, who has a YouTube channel and really pushes.
Yeah. So there's gospel platforms like Gospel Hydration that have been doing good from the UK. We even have artists. So there's someone, for example, called Gaze Baba. He's an Afro gospel artist here, but he's more of a culture architect. So like the first two biggest youth Afro gospel festivals we've had, we had two of them in 2019, were set up, from the moves he was making, and several of us at the back. So you have myself, for example, I'm also like, I wouldn't even call it pivoting. I've always paid attention to building culture as well. So you find us, so in my case, especially because of my gifts, you find us, I mean, when I came in, for example, into the space, the quality of artworks that Afro gospel artists were putting out, and even contemporary music artists in my generation are putting out, were not necessarily up to par, creatively speaking. Yeah. And here comes Angeloh, and I take the cover art game to the next level. And now it's available to, of course, now we're becoming more and more premium these days, but it was an essential shift at that time. That's one way it was happening. You have people, I have young friends who have come and set up platforms. There's a girl named Ada. She lives in New York, but she comes back home from time to time to set up something they call Believers Born. It's like a place where believers in the city come around and chill and have fun and play games and watch performances and then have a good time. People are building platforms. You have pastors who are setting up events and calling. You have artists at the moment. There's like a festival that's coming up in December. It's being put up by a supposedly urban worship type artist, but she like has agenda she understands the agenda for the Afro gospel community and what we can do. And so like she set up a whole set in the event. You have the heavy hitting worship leaders in the event, but she's like carved out like a whole set just for Afro gospel expression to find its place. So those are the things that have started happening, and we're trusting the Lord that as it continues to grow, Afro gospel will become a major thing. Yeah,
man, I'll be honest, I just let you talk because there's so much.
There's so much.
Rich. Yeah, it's a lot. And this is the reason why I wanted to do a podcast. It wasn't just because I want to talk about the music, but I feel there's such a group of people here in the States that have no clue that this music exists. And sometimes I'll tell you, like the way I came across Afro pop was a viral video of some kids in Africa dancing to a rhythm. And I was like, yo, that's amazing. I need to find out who that is. And then after I found that out, I was like, is there a Christian version of this? Like, do we have some? And so I remember coming across one of your records. This is like 2 years ago. And if you don't know, Angeloh's parents, he has a musical background. Dad's a DJ, mom is a singer. And so knowing that he's been influenced creatively by them, still doing music. And I was excited to have him on because I knew he could give me an insight on I want people who listen to this, and my feed is off. It doesn't matter. I don't care about that. I need you to listen to this because it's really important. I'll put his video there on the right, or his cover to his CD, whatever. I'll figure something out. That doesn't matter. What matters is that you need to check this music out because it's a huge gap. People don't get this. This is the thing that I think people don't get, Angeloh, especially here in the States. It's taken me time. I'm not going to lie. I'm one of those people that hasn't figured it out, and it's taken time to figure it out now. So Africa is this country, and it's huge in mass, like compared to the States. And so there's a lot going on. There's really creative, genius, beauty, mastermind. Things are happening in Africa that sometimes here in the States, we're so oblivious because we're stuck on what we're doing here. And like you said, Maverick music, and if it's Lecrae, if it's whoever, Andy Mineo, whoever it may be that we may be listening to. But there's a whole genre when you want to refresh it, when you want to change it up. And so I wanted to know, why do you think, or what have been the reasons why it's taken this long for it to get over here. And it's still like trickling because I'm being honest, like to find good Afro gospel, now there's playlists, so it's a little easier. But a couple years ago, it was trickling in. It was like gold. If I would hit a playlist, boom, and it'd be like a record, and I would go do my homework. Is this dude really a Christian? Let me go check out because he's talking about. And so why do you think it's taken so long for it to get over here statewide? Now if we both know this, now it's a frenzy. Like it's like how you said, if people don't do or they don't add Afro pop to some of their records now here, you're not cool in the States. Like people are looking for that vividly. I mean, from Drake to whoever you want to say, everybody's doing it in some kind of frame or form. It's taking some time to get here. Why do you think it's taken so long for it to transition over here to the States?
Yeah, so to really touch on that, and I have to even like bounce off to the broader genre, which is Afro Beatz itself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, something has happened now, like in the past year. So literally, like if you come to the country now, all the top Afrobeat artists, so I'm talking the Davidos, the Wizkids and co, none of them are in the country right now.
Whoa.
Whereas everybody's in stateside touring. And that's something that like it started years ago, but now like 2021 was like next level. And the reason I allude to that, because I was looking at some stats the other day, and it hit me like there's an African revival, or there's something God is doing, and Africa is like at the forefront of that thing. And you know, when we hear God is moving, sometimes we always think, oh, because God is moving, then he's saying Christians are moving.
Yep.
But meanwhile, when God is moving, is the whole territory. And at that point, what begins to happen is, so for example, there's something that happened season where we're learning a lot of stuff. So like the bigger alludes to. And in the sense that I'll just give a little story. I believe strongly that first of all, if we go back to the story of Egypt and the famine, I believe strongly that the only people God was super essentially core about saving was Israel. But the famine that was coming could not be prayed away. And God needed to save Israel. But he needed somebody who was powerful enough, influential enough, in control of territory enough that could actually solve the problem. And so instead of Jacob, who is now Israel, seeing that dream, he has to go and look for Pharaoh.
Yeah.
Unbelieving, idol-worshipping, idol in his own rights and self, to give him that dream. Why? Because he's the only person in the entire world at that time who can actually carry out what God is trying to do. And so to ensure that God's will is done, God now has to route a young little boy called Joseph and take him through all kinds of preparations so that just at the right moment, he's available to ensure that the most powerful person that's receiving this mandate has somebody godly enough and wise enough to execute that mandate in the way that will preserve God's plan. Why did I say this? So I say this because, you know, when I was looking at this whole space, because again, like I said, it's easy for you to look at things and when you hear, oh, there's a move of God. I mean, revival in the country for the past 1 year, there's been a wave of revival, like the whole season of revival has been happening in the past 1.5 years.
Yeah. And
it's breaking out. The way I see it now is an industrial revival. So it's not the type, I mean, the past revivals we've seen, it creates more churches. The revival that has just happened and is happening is creating industries. So you're going to have believers who are going into office, going into business, going into spaces, which now lends back credence to what I was saying. The gospel is the power of God finding expression through what you do. In other words, Jblaze now is probably going to head off with his podcast and head off into entertainment media and probably decide to champion Afro Beatz for some reason. And then it becomes a whole huge thing. And because of it, many people can find expression and find sustainable life because of this thing.
Amen.
And in that, they'll find Christ as well.
Amen.
So that's the kind of revival that has come. And so again, like I said, it's not a church thing, because God said it's revival. People just assume it's only Christians.
Yeah.
It's a globe thing. So it's not an issue of whoever is ready. So why I said that example is because if it's Pharaoh that is ready and available and able to carry out that plan, the Lord is going to raise the stones he needs to get the job done. If he's willing to use stones, he's willing to use pharaohs to get the job done. So now that's a side gist. But here's what happened. For Afro beats generally, it was a struggle. You know, there was pop music going, like I said, something happened. It first happened locally, in the sense that we started creating better music. So before, we were trying so hard to be American and English with our music, but somehow we started becoming more bold about trying out our own sounds and owning who we were.
Yeah.
In the beginning, it wasn't working at first, but eventually we found it, and many creatives started to run with it. And a few, you know, especially with the few who were bold and creative enough to get it done, they did it so well, it inspired the next generation and even their peers to like really, really dive in and research and develop the sound.
Yes.
Now we've come to a point in our culture where if you're in the party or in the club or in church, you can play African music back to back. In fact, if you played a Drake, we only probably want to listen to Drake because there's whiskey on it.
Yeah, I get it.
You know, if you like Drake, yeah, play that in your house. Don't play that outside. You know, nobody's going to beat you up, but you get the context. Now there was an interview that a certain artist called Davido. He's like the next one of the biggest. And he was given a story which we knew, but you know, for those of us who pay attention to the culture, we knew about, but it was good to see somebody actually confirm that it was true. What happened? So you had Nigerians in America, in England, who started making money, coming into wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'd go out to hang out in the parties and in the clubs where the DJs rotate. And you hear somebody be like, hey, see, I want to buy out the bar. And all I need you to do, DJ, is play me so and so person's song. And I'll buy out the bar for the night. I mean, he's going to pay money and make money for the club, right? So we play the music. So you have somebody who came with agenda and power to push the agenda. Then they played the music, and it turns out the music is actually good.
That's
and everybody's like, why didn't we hear this? Because again, let's face it, like, you know, when we talk about, I mean, in the state side, you know, it's so funny, like when they say, oh, the NBA world champions. I'm like, why do you call it world champions? They only play the NBA in the US. The US is one country. How is you a winner of the NBA playoffs, the world champion? Like, it's just one country.
I get but you know, I want to mess up your britches here, Pastor. But you know, the NBA, the best basketball. You know this basketball.
No. It is the best league in the world. That's not what I said.
No, I get it. I'm just messing with you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, man, it is the best league in the world. It's like the most entertaining league.
But I understand what you mean when you say. I know what you mean. What you say in the context.
Yeah.
Well, how are you gonna say it's the world? You didn't play the world. You guys are in the 50 states.
You didn't play the world, you know. So, but guess what? America is a world power, right? And because it's a world power, it affects everything, not just the military force. So, all of us, when Michael Jordan was, you know, acting Space Jam, all of us grew up watching Space Jam, and we're 8 hours away from you guys.
That's crazy.
And all of us were lining up to buy Jordans, learning how to play basketball, singing I Believe I Can Fly.
Wow.
Rolling over Bugs Bunny. We're 8 hours away from you guys. Why? Because you have a nation that has grown powerful, influential, is aware of that influence, and are dedicated to positioning themselves as the light of the world. Yeah. And so for so long, everybody revolved around the system. So what happens? I mean, Nigeria and Africa like has been a third world continent for a long time. It's not brand new. So it means that we don't have the power, or we don't have the power, we don't have the influence, we don't even have the media capacity to push Africa to the world at the rate that, you know, the first world countries have been able to do, you know, and by so doing influence the whole world, right? So that's really why it takes so long. Everybody knows when Michael Jackson drops a new song faster than when it takes to get, because you're the one that's feeding the world, not the other way around.
I know. It's crazy because in my own and I can't speak for everybody, but you're right.
No.
Sadly, because we live here in the States, you assume that everybody's moving at that speed, or that influence is there already automatically. So, because you're not thinking about Africa. Well, Africa's huge, you know, because the perception that we get from the States, and again, this could be way off, it's so different. Now, as I'm older, a couple of things have happened. Like, and this is going to sound really funny to you, but it's the sad truth of what pop culture and the influence it has on us here. So yes, I knew about Africa since I was a little kid. Did everything change once I saw Black Panther and envisioned and saw Black people empowered in such a way, Africans empowered in such a way? Like, I was like, what up, man? I've been sleeping really hard on Africans, their continent, their culture, their people, their music, their food, everything when it comes to all that stuff. And now, so the perception has changed. Not that it's just commercial Africa, but it's like, you know what? It's intriguing. I want to be educated on what's happening in Africa. I want to ask the questions. I want to ask about the things that are happening there, because I told my wife, like, one day, I was like, yo, that'd be one of the places I would love to visit, because it's so different. It's the people are different. The culture is different. Although we serve the same God, just hearing some of the chemistry, the issues you have to deal with, some of the problems compared to here. I mean, man, it's like day and night. But that's why it's so beautiful still in it, that God is able to use people in any area and be exalted with amazing music. And to me, to hear that you're 8 hours away. And I'll be honest, man, you said something, I think people are just going to slide by it, not really pay attention too well. But so something I got, and something that really impacted me, and I think it's about the event you were talking about. So I saw a flyer that you designed for an event. It's a huge event. And it was like a silhouette sideways thing where, like, you were using African characters. It looked dope. Like, I was like, yo, I don't even live there and I want to go there. And you got the essence, the feel, just by watching an image. And so that says a lot about, yo, man, I want to, I guess that's me. That's not everybody. I'm truly interested in culture, just because, like, matter of fact, today, Angeloh, as we're talking, I went to a bakery, a Lebanon bakery. I've never been to one. Okay. I try everybody's food at least once. So I showed up. You know, was it what I expected? Not necessarily, but I met the lady. We spoke a second. I could tell how they vibe, tried some of their drinks, all that kind of stuff. To me, that at this age, when I was 20, I didn't care. As I'm older and got into it more and more, it's like, so when I came to you, I was like, I think this would be great for these many things. And to be honest with you, I want to get to the music too, because me and you could talk about, these are really long discussions and they ain't go long-winded about what's happening, because I feel like we're trying to describe a whole continent in 20 minutes. That's just not gonna happen. It's almost impossible. So I'll say, and so people get a picture of how I met Angeloh, and this is the first time we're seeing each other, but I knew about his music 2-3 years ago. I came up on a playlist. I think it was on Rapzilla. I'm not sure exactly where I heard it. And I remember the hook part where he was like, Angeloh, he did something. It caught me. You know what I mean? I heard him do it, right? And I was like, yo, this dude is sick. Who the heck is this guy? I've never heard nothing like this. And I kept, I think you have a song that says, you comfort me, if I'm not mistaken. Just far away, you comfort me. So these records, I kept hearing, right? And so people would come to me and they'd be like, yo, man, have you heard anybody new? Yeah, man, there's this dude in Africa. I don't even know if you know him, but he's amazing. You need to check him out. So I was showing them the records and they're like, you sure this is a Christian? I'm like, yes, bro, this dude's a believer. Like, this dude's a real believer. Go check out. He's doing devotionals. Like, he's legit. And so it was exciting. Met you 3 years ago. You've always put out product that's quality, everything. I saw a live performance you saw that I saw you did with with a band, and they had like a 360 camera, and so I was like, yo, this is sick. They sleeping hard on this dude, like, and I get excited. In the 20 years I've done radio, God has always shown me that forget the platform I have, give others a platform. Like, I met someone just like you years ago in the UK. His name was Dwayne Triumph. Nobody knew who he was at that time.
Man, I'm a huge fan of Dwayne, man. Dwayne changed my life. You don't know. You don't know.
So Dwayne, I met Dwayne on an email that I sent. This is years ago before I even got on the FM dial. I was just pumping mixtapes to artists and trying to get people to listen to me do a 1 hour show that I wasn't even on the FM dial yet. I wasn't an intern. I was just vision. I was like, let's do it. There was nobody really doing it. I was taking 12 CHH songs on one CD, putting my voice in between every second song, making it like a radio station and giving it out in the city of Miami. That's how I started. And then eventually God took me from there to put me on the FM dial. Then from there, a morning show in Houston. So God has done it. But these moments are pivotal because I feel like God will bring someone to just say, listen, this is someone you haven't heard. This is someone, take you out from that circle and say, we want to expose you to the world. I don't know, whatever God wants to do. I'm excited because one, there's something different. It's quality. When I hear you speak, the culture comes out, the Jesus comes out, the gospel comes out. All those things are in there. And I think people need to go check out your new record. It's called Bigger. I'll tell you, when I heard it, I was, I'm not going to lie. Like the first thought you think is like, Angeloh's just going to give me an Afro beat record, or he's going to give me like, that's what you think. This is what he's done. He switched it up a couple of times. He's given me some worship, a little worship album. He switched it up, did a little Afro. It's like, he gives me a little bit of everything, but I was like, this has to be, especially, it's because maybe I'm listening to a lot of Afro beats. So I'm like, yo, this Bigger record, the graphics look dope. I'm excited. This man doesn't do trash. Like I've never seen something that left my like, oh man, this guy got me excited and it wasn't that good. And so Bigger drops and I'm like, I saw the video, and if you haven't seen it, I'll link it on here. It's just him and he's rapping, and it talks about, and I'll let you explain it, but it talks about in reference to people who may think that their issues are huge and forget that the God that we serve is bigger than that problem. And I can attest to it because as I sit here with you, I'm dealing with a kidney issue. I'm trying to wait till God chooses a day for me to get a kidney transplant. I had one a couple years ago, and we're believing God will do that again in the next year or so. And so we're working towards that. So we're working out, doing what we got to do. But this I can relate to because there's days I sit in the chair. I'm there 3 times a week for 4 hours, and I'm sitting in a chair saying, God, this problem looks so big, like this issue. And I know there's people listening right now. This wasn't the way this is supposed to go. This interview was supposed to be really quick about music and getting it out. And I'm just like, God, whatever you want to do with it. But this song is powerful in the sense that whatever the issue may be, I don't know what that is. Whoever's listening, the God that you serve is much greater and bigger than that. And it's dope because the graphic shows Angeloh really small, and it shows this huge character in front of him as he's fighting. So I wanted to hear from you, man, the influence behind the record Bigger, and just a little bit of the inspiration behind the graphics so people get an idea. You can go check it out. I'm going to link it on here. I possibly might even put some clips of the video so you can see it, understand what it is, to go check it out. But I don't want to keep talking about it. I want you to tell people about that new single Bigger, man.
Okay, so I'm going to be real quick, but before that, I just wanted to say that I really hope we can get to the discourse about why it's taking so long for us to break into the US. There was something going on there, but let me talk about Bigger. Yeah. So basically, the song is literally self-explanatory. The idea of the song is for anybody who has been grinding hard. Like, I mean, look at your grind, and I'm sure there were days. So for me, this is what happened. I started out music a long time ago, and I had a couple songs that were doing well underground, and I needed to break through to the next space. That time, streaming had not become a thing in Nigeria, so the way we used to release music was quite different and difficult, and like required so much money that we didn't have at the time. And so I had like this manager then who was trying to get me plugged into stuff, and he introduced me to a couple of people who have like millions to throw around, and like, oh yeah, we love what you do, man, you're super talented, but man, this Jesus thing, nah, you can't do it with money, man. And I mean, people are slapping you with like 7-figure deals, and you're in the middle of college, poor as hell, and in need of anything to help your life, and I mean, one of those deals, for example, was so big. Myself and my current manager, like he's my big bro and business partner and everything, we couldn't sleep for like 3 days. We didn't even like talk to each other for like 3 days because everybody was numb, trying to figure out, Lord, should we do this, should we not? But the idea is, in all those conversations and all those things that have happened in life, what happened is I've come face to face, and these are literal terms. The song was basically like me talking back at the voices that had come to me. And I'm not saying voices in my head. I'm like literal conversations, conversations like, man, this is your Jesus thing you're doing, bro. There's a likelihood you won't blow. There's also a likelihood you may blow but be poor because church is not buying it and the club ain't gonna call you to come and sing about Jesus, obviously. Maybe you become popular and make some money, or maybe you be like doing 9 to 5 and have enough money to just be doing the music as a side thing. Or if you're really, really lucky, maybe you break out. There was that. And I remember me going into music. I was like, Lord, you know what? If it's this way, then I have art and other stuff, right? Bless me, let me do this thing, So there was that part. And now we've been trying to do that and creating. We got to a whole struggle of trying to create music, and then got into a space where God enabled us to start creating music. Then the next hurdle was putting music out, and there was like roadblocks everywhere, And here I am young, I don't like to lie. I wanted fame. I want fame. Fame is key. God has taken me through the process of understanding what fame is. But then I wanted fame. I wanted to be successful. I wanted to have money. I wanted to have all the fine ladies around me, for all the wrong and right reasons. And here was a proposal for you to leave this Jesus thing and do something else that could change your life and give you all those things ASAP. And for so many reasons, and I don't like to say it because I think like, I did one kind of big thing for the Lord. I was telling a friend the other day, I said, man, you're like, man, I love your sacrifice. I'm like, bro, I don't know if you should be hailing me. I didn't do any of these things because I'm going to say something very funny, but I'm sure everybody listening, you'll hear what the Spirit is saying. I don't surrender to the Lord because I know people say like, you need to love the Lord because you need to love the Lord. You're supposed to love God for God and not because of what you want. I'm like, my baby is here. She don't care if I love her or not. She just wants to eat food and be happy and be alive and be loved.
In fact,
and nobody stresses her out for loving me for me. Like, if I'm not taking care of her as a father, like, why should she love me? Like, what are we doing?
Big fact.
So like, before we even started talking about loving God, he's taking too many steps of love towards me. So when I start reciprocating back, there's no badge of honor like I love the Lord for the Lord. Nah, bro, he saved you from hell, saved you from sickness and disease. Okay. He's going to heal Jblaze. He's going to heal Jblaze from this kidney issue. Then tomorrow someone will be like, man, I love your surrender to the Lord. I'll be like, bro, he healed my kidney, bro. Yeah. Like, what else am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to not love him? Man. Like,
it's true.
Miss me with all that.
Miss me with all that research. Yeah, I want to do that.
He's taking care of me, man.
Yeah.
And I grew up really poor.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. It takes maturity. It takes time. It takes patience and true understanding. It's not easy, and I tell people all the time because there's days, man. We sound great today. Tomorrow might be straight. Not a situation you want to have a conversation with either of us, but I feel like God is always, man, he's done too much. And I'll say this, and I've said this when I had a kidney, because I had one a couple of years ago. It lasted 6 years, and then so I lost it after 6 years. But I chose to worship Jesus in it and out of it. Like when I had it, when I didn't have it, did it look perfect? Did it look picturesque how it happened?
No, imagine it came, man.
But I think God is glorified in it, man. And to me, this interview is a big deal because it just shows, man, you're carrying more weight than you even understand. And at first, I got into this interview and I was like, man, nobody, at least here in this side, has heard of this gentleman. But God, you're saying do it. And so to me, it's never been about who the person is. It's really like, what is their message? Like, how can people be impacted by it? What can they take from it? Yeah, the music is dope. Yeah, the creativity is amazing. And yes, you can get inspired. But when it holds weight, man, when it has weight, there's people you speak to, they hold weight. You know what I mean? You could tell when you have a conversation with them, they're honest. They've been through some things in this faith walk. So the way they maneuver, the way they function, the way they speak, the way they talk to people is totally different. And so not everybody's like that and everybody's cool with it. But definitely, man, excited that, especially with something like that, especially with the music and the fact that you're so well-rounded. And I will continue to pray. That's all we can do from this side. It's like, man, because this is it's a big, what it sounds like, Angeloh, from what I hear from you, is that it's this bubble that's growing, and eventually it will pop. It's getting there. And so I'm excited about that. about that process. And will you be there to the end when it does pop? Who knows? Only God knows that. But the idea is to be excited that you're even in the process of that growing. So I know you wanted to say this, and we'll end with this. I wanted to hear the last point you told me about breaking in, or why it's taken so long for music to come to the States. You did mention exactly how the realm of influence and that the size of what the U.S. is, and sometimes how we just take for granted. We think everybody's going to move that fast, but it hasn't. You were like, I have one more point, and so I want to make sure you get that point across, so you can sort of guide us at the end so people can check out the single and stuff like that.
All right. Okay, so I'll do my best to be very quick. So the reason I brought up the story of the Nigerians who were buying out the bars just to be able to play the kind of music they wanted to hear. Like I said, Nigerian music had grown to the point where we don't want to listen to foreign music again. We like play our songs back to back in the clubs all night.
Stuff.
And so you had people who had traveled outside, worked hard, and had enough money, and they were like, man, all this stuff, I love it, it's cool, but I just want to feel like I'm home again. Buy out the bar and play me my favorite song. And then they play it, and then everybody likes it, and somehow he finds himself in rotation. And that's how it continued to pick up. Of course, there's so many other things happening, business people coming in, the artists back in Africa still pushing hard every day. Because, I mean, these artists have been big in Nigeria for a while. So that's another thing. Like, I mean, somebody comes now, you're just seeing him in the US now, but he's like a whole big thing in Africa. Wow. But nobody knows, because the US is like the media powerhouse. So what is happening now for Afro Beatz? Afro Beatz is now becoming a global phenomenon. Why? Because it's breaking in the US.
Yeah. It is.
So now back to why I said that is because one of the things I now realize, like I said earlier, the reason why we're transitioning is because you have younger pastors coming in, and they understand the culture, and so they plan for it in the culture they're creating in their churches. We also have creatives who are growing and becoming more than creatives, who are building platforms, both musicians, platform builders, promoters, and all that good stuff. But why I was saying this was especially for the people. So we, and I'm hoping this comes true as clearly as it should. I don't think, and it's not, I'm not saying this because I had it by default. It's something that God has had to work on for a while, but I don't think Christians are as unashamed as they say they are or should be.
Wow.
I say this because there's so many kinds of agenda we see flying around the planet. I'm not going to name drop so they don't flag your show.
Yeah.
But if you see the amount of, even for stuff that you most likely think is like, man, this thing is like stupid. I don't understand how a human being woke up and thought about this stuff and is explaining this to me. But if you see the level of unashamedness that the high and lows in that category, whatever the category is, push what they believe in your face so much so you may have to choke on it if they have to, if they can.
Yeah.
And eventually it breaks. And so why I used Afro Beatz was because it was the same thing. So you had people who had started, young Nigerians who were in positions of influence and positions of wealth and could effect certain kinds of moves in as little as telling the DJ, I will pay so and so just for you to play so and so. But when you have a community, so why I'm saying this is because believers now will have to, I mean, of course, pop culture is fun. Yeah. So I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to look anybody in the face and tell you that, oh, you stop listening to secular music because it's not fun. That's a lie.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm saying, look inside and find agenda. It says, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. Some translations say, seek ye first the advancement of the kingdom of God. Yeah. Right. So, I mean, Jblaze could be doing anything. The only reason a young guy like me from Africa, 8 hours away from you, is talking to the thousands of people who are going to listen to this episode is because somebody named Jblaze decided he wants to use his own platform and all his resources, even at the expense of sacrificing some resources he would have possibly gained, just to put Jesus on the map. Amen. In his own corner, right? And so I'm saying I'm looking forward to a time where we have believers actively. So, you know, I mean, it's been so funny, for example, where some of the things we now begin to notice, for example, we like when a Christian thing has become so popular. We like it when it becomes very big and popular and mainstream, like, and it's a good thing.
Yeah, when it's trendy.
Then so in fact, that's actually the exact word. then here's where it now gets tricky. We like trends. So it's not even that we like trends. We actually like trends more than we even like our agenda. In the sense that we like a trend so much that if a celebrity wakes up one morning and affiliates himself with Jesus, we would celebrate it to the ends of the earth more than we would ride for the people who we've seen put in the work.
Boy, you're going to ruffle some feathers. Be careful.
I'm being very careful.
No, I think
very, but
no, I
but,
think
but
it,
you
no, and you're talking about when you say something like that and you mention that, Angeloh, that's the US in a nutshell. That's literally what pop culture is.
So that's what's the thing. It's not even just the US. It literally happens here.
Everywhere.
Everywhere, man. Like the list is endless. And for so many reasons. I mean, even you could have a pastor come on Sunday and preach about, man, support these guys. They're doing awesome work. And then they're putting up a show, and then they will invite a mainstream artist that probably just put out a very condescending album that there's nothing holy about, but simply because he comes to church on Sunday and everybody knows, they'll rather fly him out. And I mean, I can't blame him, right? Like, this person is popular, he's going to bring a whole audience out. So I understand that, and it's essential, which is why, like I said earlier, that Israel has to grow to the point where they don't have to wait for Pharaoh to dream for him.
Yes, sir. I get it. Because
if Israel remains small, then they will have to look for Pharaoh to give the dream. And that's like literally the heart of the song Beggar. Like, it's a time to step out, step inside, align yourself, find whatever alignment you need to find with God, and then step out. Like, it's like a season of death to smallness, because smallness has never helped anybody in this life. If you're small, you can't help anybody. If you're poor, you can't help anybody. If you're downcast, you can't help anybody. It takes somebody who is up to lift the downcast. It takes someone who is wealthy to empower the poor, or even empower regular society. It takes people who are influential to move culture in a particular angle. So what has happened is there's also been like this whenever all of us come to church, or in over time, I mean, and there's scriptures too. And the funny thing about our faith is you can find scriptures to back up anything. And so one of the things that I think the devil really slid in very carefully into our culture is to accept smallness. So because that money is the root, the love of money is the root of all evil.
Yeah.
You're more quickly to align with poverty than to understand that money answers all things.
Sure.
And there's a place for it, not the love of it. And there's now, you now hear things like, suffer as a good soldier for Christ. And then it's very easy for you to accept suffering that has no, like I tell my people, like, you're looking at when you preach about suffering, God, and there are a whole lot of people that preach about suffering and godly suffering. I'm like, see, if you look at the apostles, he said even Jesus endured the suffering of the cross. Why? There was a glory ahead. There was a direct result of glory that suffering was going to bring. Yep. The apostles were experiencing all kinds of hunger, pain, and death because their their suffering was going to bring about advancement for the gospel. A huge body of Christians are suffering for suffering's sake. Our suffering didn't help the gospel. It didn't help anybody. But you find scriptures and say you're suffering for the cause of Christ. Meanwhile, Christ is not glorified in any way in our suffering.
I get it. Listen, man, you're going into something so different.
Well,
and
let's just wrap up.
This is you trying to take me to church, man. Yeah, I mean, we're about to have to start passing the offering plate in a minute here because
I'm gonna sign up on Cash App ASAP.
What you said?
I need me some Patreon.
Yo, listen, how do people check out your socials, man? You killing me, man. I'm about to put the PayPal logo up here in a second. Stop playing with me. How do people check you out, man? Your music, and go check out the new single, Bigger.
Thank you, man. That's the message of the song, man.
How do people go check you out? What are your social media?
Oh, how do people check me out? Oh, okay, man. My social media, it's Angeloh. So ITSANGELOH. It's Angeloh. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. For my music, if you go straight to my Instagram, you see my link. Any of my social media platforms, you go to the link, you click it, all my music links drop down. Both music, I'm a music artist, I'm a visual artist, art director.
This man does
I'm
animation. Okay, he does animation.
I'm an animator, like,
he does all
you know, I just launched my new companies, you know, so we're like creating, like,
and listen, if you
we're
listen,
doing a lot, man.
it looks good. It looks good and it's dope and it's fresh, and you need to go check it out.
I actually created a new cover for Bizzo's new track with Music Soul Child.
Oh, you did? Okay, cool. So
yeah, so
profile, right?
Yeah.
It's on the profile. Okay, perfect. So go check out Angeloh, his new record, Bigger. Go stream it 1,500 times and go check out. I'm gonna give you a nugget. If you haven't, go check this. I think I'm gonna use a clip of that actual like band. Man, one thing is to just rap on top of a track. But watch this man do his thing live with a band. It's pretty sick. So I'm going to try to use a clip so people can see what I'm talking about. So you can go check it out. I think it'll be dope, man. Angeloh, thank you for your time. Shout out to the
Thank you, man.
Nigeria. Appreciate you for all your time, my friend.
Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate this, man. My regards to everybody.